Good morning, sisters and brothers. I hope this day finds you all well. Um, been away for a while. I have to tell you, it's felt good not having all that responsibility of all the studies, but at the same time, I do miss it. So I'll get into the word from time to time and really dig in hard studying it. And, you know, one of the questions that really begins to form in my mind. I can't speak for anybody else, of course, but you really do think on these matters long and hard. Just because I'm away from it doesn't mean I've stopped thinking about things. You can never stop thinking about things. But you begin to realize when you're skimming parts of the Bible how man really was thinking in the beginning. And so I hit on this strange question, and we're going to recap again why Jeroboam does what Jeroboam does, which is that we're told in I can't even remember, was it First Kings chapter 12, verse 28, that he was making these two calf idols, and one he set up in Dan and the other in Ephraim. And we'll go back to why he did that. But the question that I ended up asking, because Sennacherib, after he went up and he blasphemed the holy name of the one who sat between these cherubs, which we really identified should not have been idols of bulls, really. In your allegory, you begin to realize that these were really wise women that stood beside what would have been considered the mother at that time. And so she was hearkening to her mother, in a sense, the wise woman on one hand, and then on the other hand, the one that she was bringing up to teach this law too, and the way that things ran. So these are allegorized as serpents. Serpents are wise. Then over time, then becomes male. They translate over to males. Over time, we then get two male idols standing called cherubims or seraphim. They're not seraphim, they're cherubim. But then you begin to realize that contamination and how they were changing it all over. And so I got up reading into Sennacherib again. And after he blasphemed her holy name, who sat between the cherubim, he says to her, he threatens her. He says, I went up and I tore your holy places down. I tore, your high places down, is what he was saying. And at the end of all of that, he gets caught away by something that's taking place in his homeland. So after the 185,000 soldiers that was with Sennacherib gets struck by the angel of the Lord, which is the presence of God, the women, um, you'll get it if you actually put in the time to study it. You're not going to get it listening to this because your mind's going to shut it down. If you're new and you're a Christian and you believe in Jesus and you pull me up, you're going to shut it right down because you're not even going to bother to go look, right? That's the trouble that's with us all. We won't go look. We won't go do the hard study, and that's what's going to get you the answers. That's going to refute him in the case that's coming. And so in the end, Sennacherib returns back to his homeland, and there he goes supposedly into the temple of his god that he worshipped. And he gets murdered supposedly by his two sons. I think it was two daughters myself, based on what I've come up that he was actually worshiping and why he was worshiping this. And it wasn't a god, it was a man. And then his third son becomes the king. Well, that didn't really reason to me, right? It doesn't reason at all. Why would these two sons murder this man and take off, hightail? And then this third son comes in as king. It had to be two daughters based on what he was worshiping. So this was the question: who did king of Assyria, Sennacherib, worship? So in 2 Kings 19:37, it says, and it came to pass as he was worshiping in the house of, and it's got Nisroch, his god, that Adremelech and Sharazir, his sons, no, I think it was his daughters, smote him. They had good reason to, with the sword. And they escaped into the land of Armenia and Esarhaddon, his son, reigned in his stead. So there's a lot of questions that comes along. Now, I meant to pull this up. Sorry. I apologize. I did not intend for this. I thought I had all my tabs. This may mess with the computer for a minute while I pull it up. I'll try not to speak. No, it's not going to let me. It's just okay. So I'm going to leave the link down below. And it's Nisroch. Nisroch, and you go to Wikipedia and you pull that name up. They'll say, let me see, did I write any of it down? Yes, I did. Oh, good. Yay. I was actually thinking this time. So who did Sennacherib really worship? If you go in and you look up Nisroch, the supposed god, watch. It says the name is most likely a scribal error for who? Nimrod. This hypothetical error would result from the Hebrew letter, and it goes into how this error took place due to the visual similarities of the letters involved and the fact that no Assyrian deity by the name of Nisroch has ever been attested to. Most scholars consider this error to be the most likely explanation for the name, and I do too. You want to know why? Because Sennacherib was smart enough to catch on to what Nimrod was up to. And what was Nimrod up to? Well, what did Nimrod build? Well, let's really go into the allegory in this, because I never really did. I've never really thought in these other aspects on these aspects too deeply, because we were just trying to grab onto the general concept. And once you do that, then it allows you to go back and look at things in a deeper way. And so what was Nimrod up to? Well, he was up to building a little place called Babylon, wasn't he? And what's Babylon identified as? The harlot spirit. So what did he begin to build on? The Tower of Babel. The Tower. If you go to Song of Songs, the Shulamite's neck in Song of Songs 7:4 is described as a tower. So what was Nimrod really about? When you look up babble, it means to confuse the speech, cause it to be a chaotic speak with many voices speaking in chaos. So that symbology there proves that he already understood what rituals was required of him in order to confound the speech. So he had to confound the woman's speech. I'm going to suggest to you that he built an idol very similar to a female body, and at the very top of it may well have been a male head sitting on the top, showing you that and then in this part was a bit of confusion. It was all confusion in this part of, because what it leads to is because we know what this represented. We come to understand that this is where your argument lays, in your tower, right here, where your voice box is. So he needed to confuse her speech. He needed to confuse her law. He needed to confuse her understanding, which meant that he had to put in play a harlot spirit. And so to symbolize that, he built the Tower of Babel, which leads to her babbling tower, her babbling arguments, where we see Baal shooting at the daughters as the branch as they pass over this gateway, right? Which was their rightful power of rule, rightful right of rule. So now we get why Sennacherib was doing to her what he was doing, because he worshipped the ideal the ideology, um, the theology that Nimrod had started to build on. We begin to understand how the men were working overtime to really hide themselves under this pile of lies and bury it. And they've buried it so deep that God even warned them, in the end, you will fall into this ditch and this snare, and you will not be able to come out of it, because you will have yourselves so manipulated. And we've got the sons of Satan on the pulpit. We got the sons of Baal, sons of Belial, sons of the first Adam. That's what Satan's name is, the first Adam. We see him going after her. What the first story is about is how Adam took control of the rightful sovereign, the woman, the spirit, and her law. And then it gets told. The rest of the Old Testament seems to be telling you how he was able to do that. Why the accusation? So the very beginning is basically a summary of what he did in the following chapters and how he was able to attain to the position of power, which was hers, which is why he says, now I'll be like the Most High, Satan, the first man. And we've got him, men like Sennacherib, worshiping men like Nimrod. And what did Nimrod do? Well, Sennacherib apparently knew exactly what he was doing, because he bragged to the sovereign at that time that was sitting between the cherubim, which should have really been wise women. Now, what were the cherubim? What were the cherubim? Okay. So I did take a bunch. So he also, because it would have flowed through King Solomon lived before Sennacherib. So we get this flow of Nimrod. Then we get a king like King Solomon, who we have traced the number 666 back to. He was the one that really established the system. The idea was fed by Nimrod, who began to build the Tower of Babylon, and he confounded the women's speech. Their law is your understanding. This is your argument. And yet it says the stronghold, the argument, will be restored back to the daughters of Zion, the women. Now, King Solomon lived before that. Who did he worship? Well, they'll say he worshiped other gods because of all these women. No, he took other women and wanted all kinds of women, because he wanted all the hosts out of their wombs, so he could teach. And remember, these women came from all kinds of nations, so he could teach them the lie of bowing to a king as God. That's so. What was the one that he worshipped, really fell in love with? King Solomon did. Molek. That was one that he truly fell in love with. Molek. Yeah, king. And we get that when God says, you began to worship Molek, king. You wanted a king. You did not want me, God says. You dealt treacherously with a wife of thy youth, right? So we know that it comes through this line of men who were working to build this male idol up, this male God image up, and to completely bury all knowledge of what was really going on, which was the attack on the feminine sovereign. The host comes out of her womb. She is the potter, the creator, and the maker. And it was her law. It was her right over that law to govern her own creation. He was to enforce that law. Now, that was the covenant he agreed to. And we are shown throughout the Old Testament historical accounts when we women finally are able to get our argument straight and stop with their confusion, throwing their lies at us, and get our conversation, our case set in order properly, no longer babbled. We're no longer babbling. See, what does it say in Isaiah 29? It says, they hand it off to one who is learned. It says, can you interpret this? And he says, I cannot. Well, no man can interpret it. They hid the truth under a pile of their lies, which is akin to the bull crap of Baal. Baal is another name for your husband. It's also the name of the dung god, right? Who shot at the daughter, at the branch as she went over the wall. So it all lines up. Then when we go to men like, and there's so many other passages. Woe to those who go to great lengths to hide their plans from the Lord, who do their work in darkness and think, who sees us? Who will ever know? Well, only the daughters will once they get the conversation, their case set in order and stop babbling like a harlot. That's what we go back to. So this verse is found in Isaiah 29:15. Go to Isaiah 28:15. Go to Psalm 94, read that passage. Go to Proverbs 24:11-13. I wanted to read these, but because, again, my computer won't permit me to, I'm not going to risk it. I'll talk through what I recall, what I remember. So they work at hiding their work under a refuge of lies. That's in Isaiah 28:15. We've looked at that many times. If you go to Isaiah 30, verse 1, woe to the rebellious children. They won't hearken to mother. So we get this Tower of Babel. Now, this I had started to hit on it with my thoughts and with interpreting the words and the way that they were coming at me through the Spirit. And lo and behold, the Lord put in. I Google, like I asked the question, and I found a pass, and it absolutely backed up everything I was saying. They made this idol. Nimrod made this idol, Tower of Babel, and I believe it was in the mimicking form of a female body. And right at the neck was some sort of confusion here. And then I believe he had placed a male head at the top. To get that whole ideology in play, he had to do this, right? And so when we go to okay, so we're continuing on here. When we go to, just 1 second. So I speculated that then when it goes to Nebuchadnezzar, okay, so we see Nebuchadnezzar making this male idol of gold, and he made it in the plain, the plain of Dura in Shinar, which was where the Tower of Babel was. We know that the land of Shinar was where Nimrod lived, right? So we get the progression of this. So then the very top of the Tower of Babel, in my opinion, then becomes this golden idol built by Nebuchadnezzar. Now, we're going to find out what they wrote about Nebuchadnezzar and how he was actually the reincarnation of Nimrod. And I believe that they were onto something absolutely right. Now, briefly, we're going to go here and we're going to hit on the key of David very briefly. For most of you've been here with me, you know this. So it's this verse in 1 Kings 12:28. And it says this. All right. I got to scroll. I hope it ain't affecting my camera. I thought I'd get away with scrolling. Maybe they ain't even going to let me. Okay, we'll get. Yeah. Let's read here. Counsel and on this heifer. It should be feminine if it's a heifer. It's a masculine noun. He was building male idols of bulls. And we know this to be true because based on what we're going to read here. Whereupon the king took counsel and made two enough to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. So here they're already saying that it was Now all the Red Sea was allegorized as your birthing canal, and only the glory, the women inside the nation of Israel could birth you through that admixture of lies that she still got to part, which is when she actually started. Is king about here? Well, we know it was King Jeroboam, and he do this. Okay, that's got me to the bottom here. Okay, back up. Where is it? Right there. Okay. So who was Jeroboam? Well, we found him in the portion of the Key of David, identifying what the Key of David was, who the Key of David was, which was the daughters of Zion from the north kingdom that flowed like a living water, right? It was their right to rule. And we found King Solomon tearing the houses down of these wise women. That's basically what we found him doing. And so what we find is this Jeroboam coming against King Solomon, who was actually trying to reshape the kingdom, the foundation to be based upon the harlot spirit that bowed to this male god, Molek, Melech, king. And he was producing many nations from these many women that he was taking as wives. He had 700 wives and 200 concubines, and he knew exactly what he was doing. He was changing the key of David over from the key of David to the key of Solomon. Now, this is where it starts to come into some of the witchcrafty stuff, which is the grimoire, which is the lesser key of Solomon. There's 72 names of God, is what we come up with when you research it. The Jews will say that there is 72 names of God. How many demons, according to the lesser key of Solomon, did he call on? There's 72. Now, later on, it gets to be a little over 100, but there's 72 in the very beginning. 72. All right? We're getting the shifting over of light, the glory, over to darkness. So we get the righteous daughters that were being fired at. King Solomon changing the kingdom over to a harlot spirit and actually finding a way to create the nations that would bow to a male idol. So we see the continuation of that thought through men like Sennacherib. And when you look Sennacherib up on Wikipedia, it's going to go king of Assyria, king of Babylon, king of the four corners of the world, and king of the universe. So we see what the men were doing. Now, we saw that his worship actually went back to him worshiping Nimrod. And we saw him blaspheming the women, the Holy One, inside of the nation of Israel. She that sat between two other wise women, not cherubim. So when Jeroboam goes against King Solomon on behalf of his mother, Zeruiah, who was a widow woman, it says, what's the first thing King Solomon does? Because he come against him because he was tearing her right down. He was tearing her house down, which we get in passages like Micah chapter 2. It was in the power of his hand to do it, so he was doing it. He was going to do it. Nobody was stopping him from doing it. Nobody was standing up for the righteous daughters. Nobody. All the men were easily bought off. And what did King Solomon do? He handed off power to Jeroboam. He handed it off. He bought him off, is what he did. And he came against him in the beginning based on what he was doing against the women inside the nation of Israel. Although it doesn't tell you that until you get to passages like Micah 2, and you got to sub in feminine where the feminine belongs. And then you get Jeremiah 9. Weep for yourselves, for they are casting you out of your own houses. So then we get that tower idea of the neck, the Tower of Babel. They began to babble. We began to babble in what it is we understand. We actually deny our mother. And you know what that means? In the day that you deny your creator, you actually deny any right to a new body when you do that. So we're going to get into that maybe in a minute. So we're going to read this. So he made 2 golden calf idols. We know them come straight out of the land of Egypt. Here they want to tell you, no, it has nothing to do with Egypt. Of course it has to do with Egypt. That's where the golden calf idol came from. The men went down into Egypt and they did not consult her. We're told they did not even consult. Jacob did not consult. Jacob was taking control of the house at this time. He wrestled with the angel of the Lord, known as the daughter of Zion. And he steals her name. They don't think they got to consult the women. They go straight down into the land of Egypt, and there they take on the contamination of Pharaoh the king. It comes out of the land of Egypt. Man as God. They create this male bull god. And then we get the passage, you change to glory over that which eateth grass. So then we get Jeroboam making 2 male idols, 2 bull idols, one he placed in Dan, one he placed in Ephraim, because he said to the people, he was worried they were going to go up. And at this time, Solomon was dead, we think, somewhere. And Rehoboam had stepped in to power. He was worried, Jeroboam was worried that the people would go up to Jerusalem and forget about him as the king of the north, and that they would go back to the worship of Rehoboam, the king, not what Rehoboam also had in his temples. So it was the same idols that he made. And we get this. Let me see if I can find it here. There can be little doubt, consequently, that the calves that Jeroboam made, one he set up in Dan, one he set up in Ephraim, were imitations of the colossal cherubim of Solomon's temple, in which the ox or calf was probably this forma principia. So we already saw that the nation of Israel was already led into heavy idolatry right here. The Christians, no different. No different. So we're going to go back to the Tower of Babel. Briefly, we're going to look at this. Okay. Actually, we're not going to look at it. I'm going to tell you from memory. So in 2nd Ezra 13, we've looked at this. There's this little verse, I think it's verse 18, 2nd Ezra 13 of the Apocrypha that used to be between the Old and New Testament about 200 years ago before they removed it. Now the Catholics still hold it in their Bibles, so they still know it. But in 2nd Ezra 13, verse 18, it says this, at least in the, oh, I do have it. I was thinking I had to go to my Bible, and I did mark it. So it's right here. It says this in verse 18. What does it say? I can't see very good. It says, because they understand what is reserved for the last days, but cannot attain it. It took me a while to understand. What can't they attain? What can't they attain to? You know what they can't attain to? A new body. That's what they can't attain to. They're watching us from the other side, and they are formless. They are bodiless. They are just spirits watching us. You know why? I finally understood this. You know why it says, don't fear him that can destroy the body. We see men on this side murdering the body, right, and laws giving men the right to rape, maim, murder, kill our little boys, especially our little girls, our women, murder, maim. The men go to war, they fight battles. Most of them don't want to be there. It's the head honchos doing it all, right? Manipulating everything. Don't fear him that can kill the body. No. Fear her that can destroy both body and spirit. You know why? Because you reject your mother who can give you a new body. That's what that means. I remember reading about, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, that if a spirit does not have a body, that after a while, the spirit will absolutely disintegrate. It will, eventually just not be there anymore. And so that's why they can't attain to it. You deny your creator, your maker, your potter. Your maker, your potter, and your creator is the one that forms, and that is not a man. All a man can do is crap out of his backside. You want to form something out of that, you're going to create a world that's going to go to nothing. The only one that can form you is your mother, the creator that you denied. When you get on the other side, it's too late. That's why they didn't attain it. They did not attain a new body because they denied their creator. That's what they did. So they're watching on this side. Are they learning? There's some idea that you get 7 chances at this. God says, I'll pass over you 7 times. After that, do you disintegrate? Do you go to nothing? Now, you're always going to be in some capacity here because these atoms, these whatever, are always going to be in part of the creation. So is there some sense that you will also come back into existence at some point? That's a possibility. But what I began to realize is that they were taking control of these women who was the presence of God, known as the camp of Mahanim on earth, are seen with the Shulamite. They're known as the she-goat in the Genesis 15:9 covenant. So you got to break down all of your allegories, is what you got to do, because you were not to worship no idol, neither male nor female, or any animal forms. So what we had to do is we had to understand that allegorical language that would help us to break down what these meant. What was the she-goat in the Genesis 15:9 covenant? It turns out it is the daughter of Zion denied her rightful position as the sovereign over the kingdom. The heifer represents the nation of Israel that they destroyed. They did not allow her to come into being, which is why we get the verses in Psalm 83, let us cut them off from being a nation. Who were they cutting off from being a nation? It was the women, the presence of God inside the nation of Israel, who were also the ones identified as parting the Red Sea, the admixture of lies, which now sits as a wine on your table that you get drunk on and go to sleep in. And as asleep, he strips you naked and he screws you. That's basically, I'm sorry, you don't like the language, but hey, you live it. And then you pretend to be holy. You live it. And then you pretend to be holy. What does it say in Habakkuk 2, verses 15 and 16? They put strong drink to her lip, the wine on the table. They got her drunk so they could expose her nakedness. Why would a man want to expose your nakedness? Yeah, I think you know why. It wasn't him. They got him. Just like they got in Isaiah 46, the womb belonging to the father. The womb don't belong to the father. It belongs to the mother. And the hosts that comes out of her womb are considered her creation, not his. But yet he ascended to her authority when he accused her and he said, I will now be like the Most High. Why? Because he was stealing the hosts out of her womb, taking control of her law, and he would have them down at his feet, worshiping him as if he was God. Now, Nimrod conceived of that. We go back to man pointing at her, Satan pointing at her, accusing her. She says, I'll wear your accusations like a crown upon my head. Oh, that my accuser had written his accusations in a book. Job 26. He did. He wrote them all in that book for us to get our case in order, which is then going to take you to Psalm 50 or 55. 50. Now I will set the case in order. I will rebuke you, man, for your lies. Satan, for your lies. Satan is another name for fallen Adam, the first accuser, who accused the woman so he could steal the host out of her womb and ascend to her position of authority as the sovereign over the kingdom. Now, when we come back to, right quick here, the 72 names of God, These were women. These were women. But this is the interesting thing. We are also told, and I remember this from years ago, and I never did find the passage. I didn't even think to look for it, to tell you the truth, that we are actually forming our own bodies, in a sense, based on the things that we do here. Well, the first thing you're failing at is you're not remembering your creator in the days of your youth, who is your potter, your maker, your creator, and that is your mother. When you deny your mother and you ha ha and you laugh at wisdom and you deny her rightful position of authority over you, you will not have a body in the next life. You fear the one. You fear the one who can destroy both body and spirit, not the man on this side whose written law has given him power to blunder you to death, beat you to death, rape you to death, murder you, create wars, kill men as offerings to his own blood god. Yes, the poor men who had to go off to war, trance off to war, believing this religious lie preached off the pulpit by other sons of Belial and Baal and the first Adam. They didn't want to go to war. I have heard many stories of men who did not want to have to fight in these violent wars, horrible wars. The women have no power in them usually. They're usually got children that they got to protect to the best of their ability. God knows they're not allowed to be armed. No, to defend themselves. We're defending ourselves now. This is our argument. The Tower of Babel is coming down. We're destroying it. And that golden idol, and that head at the top, Baal, who thinks he's inaccessibly high, he's coming down. So what does it say? I'm going to post this link. This was an incredible read, and it had to do with Jews who believed that Nebuchadnezzar was an actual reincarnation of Nimrod. Now, I can't read it. I don't really have the time. I'm going to have to be leaving soon. I tend to think that they're right. Absolutely right. This all had to do with the Tower of Babel. It did. And Nebuchadnezzar, as a reincarnation of Nimrod, completely understanding what Nimrod was up to, he proves it by building this male gold idol and forcing the kingdom down at their knees to worship it. Yeah. But what does it say? I'm just going to read a small portion here before I go. So, why then does God apparently have to do something to ensure that mankind will not be able to do all that it wants? Because it says, then they will be able to do whatever they want. That was to do with the Tower of Babel, right? And they did. They did begin to do whatever they wanted, but they still did not realize that she was in control the whole time. She can completely dismiss you on the other side. She don't have to give you a body. And when you deny her, you will not be given a new body by your creator and maker and potter that you denied and turned everything upside down and told her she had no power over her own creation. She absolutely has all power over it. You can fear the man that may kill you, may cause you to go to war. You can fear him. But you better fear the one that when you're on the other side, that you have no body. That can destroy both body and spirit. That's what that all means. You're not preparing yourself, are you? Which is why we get the verse again in 2nd Ezra 13, verse 18, saying, they watch on and they know and they realize that they cannot attain to it. Attain to what? A body gave to us by our mother. Our spirit is also from her because we are following her law. Therefore, our spirit is from our mother. So what they were after rather was the following. This gets so absolutely fascinating. Really, you got to read this article. They knew the mystical names of God, 72, and employed them for practical use. They were familiar with all the various angels, women, Camp of Mahanaim, the presence of God, who parted the admixture of lies and took her children out through from the land of idolatry, Egypt, right? They were familiar with all the various women and their positions in the celestial hierarchy. There's a word in the New Testament in the Greek that says they denied the celestial hierarchy. That would be the women. that was in positions of authority over the law that man had agreed in covenant to enforce, and he did not. Instead, he accused her, stabbed her in the back, and what follows after that is a telling of how he did that, how he accomplished it. And their positions in the celestial hierarchy, and were able, and in brackets, control a specific angel by using a divine name to adjure the angel that controlled it. This is what is meant by the technique of adjuration via the use of a holy name. We know how to use them to adjure a lower angel. That would be us here, right? To adjure a lower angel in the name of a higher angel that influences and controls it. If the lower angel attempts to do other than what we have to adjure, then what we have adjured it to do, it will not work at all. And they knew all of this. The generation of the dispersion knew all of this. So when they got dispersed, what dispersion are we talking about? Not the foolishness that they come up with. The dispersion was the chaos that he created when he created the Tower of Babel. That's what we're talking about. The confusion and chaos that followed. But they knew it. They knew this stuff. I said they didn't know how it worked, and I'm backtracking on that. They did. And they've buried it over from us. Now, is there another passage? There's another part here. Where, let me see, I'm going to look for it. It may take me a minute, okay? So bear with me. Yeah, and this was the other thing. We know now why they want to say the Septuagint means 70 or 72. And that they'll say scribes. It's nations, right? Because just as in the time of Nimrod, when the whole world spoke the same language and had one rule, Nebuchadnezzar also ruled the whole world. So we are talking about Babylon. Thus it is written, I will ascend above the clouds, I will be like the Most High. And the numerical value of the word for clouds is alluding to the 72 nations. Now, the verse quoted was spoken by or reflects the sentiment of Nebuchadnezzar. The numerical value of the word for cloud in Hebrew is 70 plus 2. Normally, the Torah speaks of 70 nations, and it is not clear what the additional 2 refers to. We know what they are. We know what they are. We know why they want to keep hitting on 70 and then 72. God says, these 2 nations are mine. What 2 nations? Well, Israel, when they divided it into the female of the north, the firstborn daughter, and to the male of the south, Judah. God then states in that passage, and it's referring to the Mount of Seir, that the devil walked up to the top of her mountain. He cast the she-goat, who was the sovereign, off of it. Yet she was the one that would have to bear the double upon her head. You know what that means? She was going to bleed and travail to bring forth the children until she could finally find a moment when she could deliver them and set her case in order. But we understand the 72 now. We know the 2 is reference to the male and female, which became the nation of Israel, which was idolatry, and they fell into idolatry as well. It's so interesting, but we get also why they weren't allowed to ask the name of an angel, and why the angel says, why ask ye my name? You do not ask the name of an angel, because they wanted, first off, once they got control of her name, then they were going to make this God, right? Pretended to make this God that they were actually going to worship. And then what they were up to was actually shifting it over to all male. And that's what we see them doing. And that's why we get this correlation from Nimrod to King Solomon to Sennacherib, who worshipped actually Nimrod, right? Nebuchadnezzar is said to actually be, let me see, it says, this portion of this particular piece is called Towering Blunders, but it wasn't a towering blunder. I had hit on it by reading what I had read, and then I went into it and I asked. And I think the question I had asked was, what was the shape of the Tower of Babel? And it pulled this up for me, towering blunders, just like that. And it validated everything that I had suspected, that when he was making the Tower of Babylon, which we know what that represents, a harlot spirit that bows to a male idol. We're getting it. That it was actually in the form of a female. Interestingly, when you go to I Pet Goat, there's them two towers, right? There's two towers, right? And they're in the shape of a male and a female, and then they come down, don't they? And then they come up as one, right? Which was why you got your bombing in 2001 to take down that double tower. They needed to take it down. This is all going back to our very beginnings. Our very beginnings. So know that the incident of the Tower of Babel and Nimrod transmigrated into the person and career of Nebuchadnezzar. And he did, because Nebuchadnezzar completely followed through what Nimrod was doing. This is why he erected the statue in Dura, in the Dura Valley. King Nebuchadnezzar made a gold statue of 60 cubits high and 60 cubits wide, and erected it in the plain of Dura in the country of Babylonia. Now, I said that this gold got melted down, and that's what went to King Solomon. King Solomon had the 666. It only goes back to King Solomon once in the Old Testament. And it's telling you the doctrine that came to dominate you in here, which is why you will not escape the pit that you have fell into, the snare of lies. Yet it says she escapes it. The ones who sets their case in order, you will be gave a glorified body. You will. And that means recognizing the creator, your mother that you turned on, and wisdom's laws that you rejected to hear. And you see the sons of evil, the sons of the first Adam, the sons of Satan, because that's first Adam's name, the accuser who accused the spirit, who said, I will ascend and be like the Most High. That was the sovereign of the kingdom, the mother, and wisdom. Now, I'm still not going to find it. It had to do with angels. So it had to do with the beneficence, which is what are you worshiping, is the idea. And they were smart enough to know that that power was a real power that was going to give them real power. So God sets up the workings of the world such that ideally her beneficence flows primarily and directly to the forces of holiness and goodness. That was the women, in order that they have what they need to carry out her purposes. Only a residual flow of beneficence reaches the forces of evil, just enough to keep them in existence so that they can fulfill their role in the scheme of things. Evil also does not receive its life force directly from God. Rather, each nation receives its divine flow via its celestial, spiritual, archetypical angel or principle. So they want to put prince. They changed the principles, which was your principal daughters, which was the laws that come from them. They were called your angels. And it was the women who gave birth to the nations. It was these angels who gave birth to the nations. So this is why non-Jews are allowed to believe in a certain degree of idolatry, i.e., that God shares or distributes her power to other celestial beings. It's a very interesting read. Very interesting, if you haven't hit on it, which is going to take you back to the Tower of Babel and where our downfall began and who began to cause it. But the beginning, the very opening of Adam accusing the woman, because he knew the knowledge was hers, the wisdom was hers, and he was very jealous of the fact that that knowledge was hers. And so he accuses her so he can steal the sovereign, the position of sovereign. And what follows after that, regardless of what anybody else is a telling of the tale of how man did that. And then he says, oh, they can't find what we did. I'm just looking at what else. Yeah, and that was found in what verse? I'll go back too far. It was found in woe to those, no, who go to great length to hide their plans from the Lord, who do their work in darkness and think, who sees us, who will ever know? It's on us, daughters and righteous sons. It's on us. So there's the video. Sorry. Yeah. And they knew all of that. So thus it is written, then it was begun to call in the name of God, for in the times of Enoch they knew how to manipulate God's names. The explanation given to this verse by Onkelos, that in this era mankind began to serve idols, for it means that with the knowledge that they used to manipulate the divine names of God. Now remember, King Solomon, Key of Solomon has 72 demons. We have 72 names of God. We got the lower angel, we got the higher angel. What's not known, I think, is that the higher angel can flip it back around, I think. There's something more there that they don't know. For it means that with the knowledge that they use to manipulate the divine names, they cause divine beneficence to descend to their idols. Thus, both explanations means the same. Now, this technique would not have worked had they not known how to combine the letters and names in Hebrew, which is why they say Hebrew is the language, right? But the truth is found in the allegory. It's not found in the actual language. The lie is found in the language. But the truth is found in the allegorical overlay of the Spirit, our mother. Thus it is written, the whole earth was of one language and united words. The numerical value of the words for one language is the same as that of the words of the holy tongue. So it's a very interesting read. I'm still not finding the exact part that I want where they were not allowed to, they're not allowed to call on the name of angels. They're not allowed. So these 72 demons were the 72 names of God that King Solomon flipped from glory, the glory of the Lord, of righteousness, of goodness, of all things good, fair, truth. And that 666 or 600 is telling you 6 times 6 will take you to 216. In the Old Testament, it means light. He was changing the light from one of light to one of darkness. So these 72 demons are going to have to flip, as crazy as it sounds. These 72 names are going to have to flip to become, once again, the 72 names of the Holy God. They will be reborn out of the dust of the earth. So in that time, the powers of wickedness, their powers dimming. They are no longer being able to call on the power of these supposed demons. Anyway, it's interesting, all the detail that we're coming up with. The more you think on these things, the more God will reveal them. I'll leave these two links down below. Sorry if it's, a messed up video. We're trying not to babble. We're trying to get our case in order. And I think we've done a pretty good job. It's taken us a lot of years. Anybody coming on my channel going, don't know what they're talking about. We've been at this going on soon to be 15 years. You're not going to go, no, we're right, you're wrong, because you never bothered to put the time into it. And that's absolutely how you earn your position of authority. You put your time and effort into your studies, and you haven't done that. You're too busy listening to the sons of Baal, the sons of Belial, the sons of wickedness, the sons of Satan, the sons of Adam, the first Adam. These are all fallen. They can't teach you the truth. They won't even look for it. It tickles their ears, this lie. They are not your head. They are not your rulers. And they did not create anything. They're not made in Father's image, the creator, because Father is not the creator. We have already proved creator means to form, and that is the mother that does it, whom you denied, which is why they on the other side could not attain to it. Baby, they should be mad at somebody. not mommy. I think they should be mad at daddy and the first Adam who caused it, and all this line of men who began to worship each other. Anyway, um, so back for another video. Probably won't be back again for another few months. Um, I hope you're all doing well. I hope life is great for you all. I thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having found me. Thank you for the Spirit leading you here. And willing to hear and listen with all my blunders and my bad manners. And anyway, I appreciate you all. I love you all. Um, I pray that you are all truly blessed with good things in your life, especially the truth. Um, and thank you again for watching. And I hope you all have a lovely day. And thanks again.